Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank all of you for attending today. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to speak and also answer some questions. The Burris Wellcome Fund has a rather straightforward mission to advance biomedical research and education. And we see as central to that two things, the education and also the communication of the results. And we learned a lesson, as I think some people have learned, that even though you go to school and you teach, you're not necessarily aware of education. And so several decades ago, science education and the science of science education blossomed, and I think we're doing a much better job of teaching science based on that research. And we feel similarly about the science of science communication. Everyone feels they're a communicator because they give a speech or they talk to people. And of course, in reality, it doesn't necessarily translate that way. So we're committed and have committed funds and effort to trying to improve science communication. And why do we see this as necessary? Well, first, one of our missions of advancing biomedical research and education is to elicit intellectual curiosity in our audience, no matter who the audience may be. And the benefit of that and the benefit of connecting people to what we do and what our goals are is that at the younger level, we hope that some of these young people will ultimately become scientists or become doctors or be involved in some way. And even if they're not ultimately scientists, we hope that in fact they become supporters of science or individuals who understand science better when they pick up the newspaper. The second, of course, part of it is to convey to people the importance of science, and that then translates, we hope, to more funding for science. We are a foundation with a limited budget, and in fact, a small budget relative to our friends up the road at the NIH. And unless we can engage people and convey to them the importance of science and the importance of what is being done in biomedical research and other areas, we won't see support past the few dollars that we're able to provide annually. So we see science communication as central. One of the things that's pointed out in the report, and one of the things we feel very strongly about, is in choosing your audience and understanding your audience. So remember I said we had two goals, advancing research and education. When we get ready to advance education, we do so at the K through 12 level in particular, and we try to engage our audience understanding who they are. So in the case of the K through 12 level, we've produced two whimsically illustrated books for kids at the middle school. It turns out that this translates well to their parents also, and we've provided 25,000 copies throughout North Carolina with this audience. A second audience, in fact, are the scientists themselves. We see a big issue in scientists communicating with each other. It's not just an issue of scientists communicating with the public, they also have to communicate with each other. In so doing, they improve their science, they advance their science, they advance the science of others. So we, a number of years ago, worked with Howard Hughes in producing a course and a book called Making the Right Moves. It's all about helping our scientists communicate with each other, but at the same time, helping them communicate with the public. So we see those as central to our mission, scientist to scientist, scientist to young people or to the public. And one of the things, a final area, and then we can talk more in questions, is our actual method of deciding who receives our awards. Unlike most foundations, we don't do it all on paper. You have to submit an application for one of our awards, and then we bring in twice as many finalists as ultimate awards to speak to a committee, and in so doing to answer questions and present their results. It's an expensive, it's a somewhat tedious process, but in fact is extraordinarily important in our decision making as to who should receive awards. And one of the things in seeing this is a huge gap in our young scientists in being able to communicate science. And it's a huge oral gap. If you look at the absence of speech classes and opportunities and scientists being forced to speak about their science to the public, you realize that our educational system has moved away from it, and we as scientists have also moved away from it. The days of forcing graduate students, postdocs to speak, to give their results, have in many cases been replaced by poster sessions. Yes, there are considerably more efficient, but no, they don't provide one of the core issues that we at the Burris Wellcome Fund feel important. If you communicate science, it's important that you're able to get up in front of people and speak about your science, that you understand your audience, and that you can provide information to the audience in a fashion that, as Alan and others have already referred to, that they respond to and understand. And finally, we ask our scientists to participate as much as possible in general gatherings of this sort. Go to scientific meetings. Whenever possible, participate in science festivals. In North Carolina, we support the North Carolina Science Festival. This past year, 250,000 people participated in science festival events in all 100 counties of the state of North Carolina. Again, by supporting that, we see that as a mechanism of supporting science communication and giving people an opportunity to do so. So thank you very much for your time.
Before I turn over to Mark, though, I do want to say that part of, I think, what we've been discovering most people in philanthropy have been doing have been experimenting with different ways of trying to reach different audiences. And one of the topics we haven't talked about this morning is about use of social media, which I think when you started was not as prevalent clearly. And perhaps you just talk a little bit about your experience with that.
We have a very active communications director, Russ Campbell, who has embraced social media far faster and more completely than the president of the fund. And we have found that it's been very interesting. We have a Twitter account, we have Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and we have found, very interestingly enough, that Twitter is far and away the communications and social media of choice. And it's, interestingly, most obvious among science teachers. We see that when we have a meeting and when teachers are communicating amongst themselves, between each other, that they use Twitter. So we have thousands of Twitter followers, and it's been a very interesting experiment. And as scientists, we should be willing to take such experiments, try Twitter, social media of all sorts. And we see, obviously, that as time progresses, social media will replace many of the more traditional mechanisms, and we hope will be an effective way to communicate science. So thank you for the question.
And we'll get back to you in a few